Want to tip the host? Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description. Get a free Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt with a donation of $50 or more. The following is a production of Stevenson Media.
This is the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson.
My goodness, thank you so much. Please be seated. My fellow Houstonians, welcome to this Houston Sports State of the Union address for the week of December the 1st. As always, there's a million different things you could be doing this evening, but you chose to spend a little bit of time with me, and I appreciate it. I'm the self-appointed president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson. It is my honor to celebrate Houston sports with you this evening. On tonight's show, Aziz Al-Shaair has been suspended for 3 games for an illegal hit that he made on Trevor Lawrence on Sunday's 23-20 win over the Jaguars. Is the suspension too harsh? Was it a dirty hit? Does the NFL need to change the rules? Do the quarterbacks have some culpability in these hits when they do happen? We'll discuss that. Also, the Rockets are 15-7 after defeating the Oklahoma City Thunder, but losing to the Sacramento Kings on Tuesday. That was a game that saw multiple technical fouls handed out to Rockets players. It even had 2 ejections of Rockets players. My question is Dylan the villain rubbing off on this team in a good or bad way? Do the Houston teams in general have an image problem between the Astros, Texans now, Rockets? Do they have an image problem? Are our teams embracing the role of villain? We will discuss this and more. I appreciate you so much for joining me. Really quick, let me remind you of the ways that you can support this show. Number 1, you're doing right now. You're watching, you're listening. Hopefully by now you are sharing with your friends and your family. Please remind them to follow, like, subscribe wherever they watch or listen to podcasts to the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. It can be found on X. It can be found on Facebook. It can be found on YouTube. It can be found on Twitch. If you prefer to listen to your podcast rather than watch them, you can find me on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, YouTube Music. You can also find me on iHeartRadio. Pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, you will find the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. And that is the number 1 way that you can support me. I would love it if you guys would leave a review, leave me a rating, hopefully 5-star. But, I'm not going to beg for 5-star. If it's not 5-star, you don't have to leave me 5-star. But yeah, please leave me a rating. Please leave me a comment. Let me know if you're enjoying the show. I really do appreciate that support. If you would like to support the show monetarily, if you look in the corner here of the video you're watching, there is a QR code. If you're able to scan that QR code, that will lead you to my tip jar. If you can't scan that code, there's also a tip there is also a link to the tip jar in the description of the video you're watching or the audio that you're listening to. That tip jar, anything you leave for me, will go directly back into me bringing you content for this show. A donation of $50 or more will give you a free Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt, hoodie, hat, some combination of the 3 perhaps. But I would love to have Houston Sports State of the Union podcast fan gear out and about. So if you guys leave me any donation of $50 or more, I will send it to you. I have to remind you that you will have to screenshot your donation and either email it to me or send it to my direct messages on the socials so that I know it was you and I know where to send your Houston Sports State of the Union podcast swag. Another way you can support are with the affiliate links that you will find in that same description. There's Houston Sports fan gear links, they're Amazon links, and there's also Amazon links to the equipment that I am using to bring you this show this evening. Anytime you make a purchase with those Amazon links, either of the Houston Sports fan gear or the podcast equipment, I will receive a little bit of change from that, and I appreciate it. Once again, that money also goes right back into the show to continue trying to bring you great content. And I do have sponsorship spots available for both the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast and the Twin Toros podcast. that I do in collaboration with ESPN Houston and Ruben Calvillo of 713 Houston Sports. If you are interested in sponsoring both or one of those shows, please reach out to me, hsstateoftheunionpod@gmail.com, or feel free to hit me in the DMs of my socials if you're following. If you're not following, well, good. My link tree is in the description as well. Click that, and you'll have all of my socials there and everywhere that you can consume the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast and the Twin Toros podcast. Okay, got all that out of the way. I thank you guys so much for joining me once again. If there is anybody who was watching live, I'd love to chat with you, so feel free to hop on in the chat and join the discussion. If not, if you're watching or listening later, go ahead and leave me a comment on Facebook, on Twitch. You can leave a comment on X, or send me an email. However you want to reach me, man. I just want to talk to the people of Houston. Let's get into this thing, man, and we will start with the state of the Houston Texans. All right, the Houston Texans did eke out a win against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 23-20. And now they're headed into the bye week, the much long-awaited bye week. And I think Houston Texans fans, in a vacuum, if you told them that after 13 weeks the team would be 8-5, I think most Texans fans would probably take that. I remember when the schedule came out, I had the Texans at best going 12-5, and I had them at worst winning 10 games. So if you told me 8-5 at the beginning of the season, I would have taken that. However, not every 8-5 record is created equally, obviously, and the Houston Texans have still not met the expectations that a lot of people had on them at the beginning of the season. Why is that? Well, mainly the offense has not been good, especially in the second half. We've talked about this multiple times now, how the Texans went multiple games without even scoring a single touchdown in the second half. We saw them do it against the Cowboys, and then they went right back to their same old problems in the game against the Titans. So they did score second half touchdown in this game against the Jaguars. Unfortunately, even though the offense looked pretty good, the offensive line played relatively well, all things considered. D'Amico Ryans actually gave them the game ball, which was a surprise to me. But, I mean, they blocked really, really well for CJ and for Joe Mixon. CJ was sacked twice, but I really think those sacks were on him. He was hanging onto the ball a little bit too long in both of those situations. However, the defense got carved up by Mac Jones. Why was Mac Jones playing? Well, I mentioned it in the open. There was an illegal hit put on Trevor Lawrence by Azeez Al-Shaair. And if you watch the game, it didn't look good. He admitted Trevor Lawrence immediately went into that fencing position. You could tell that he had taken a hit to the head and that he was suffering some type of cognitive issue. And it was a bad look. As it was going in real time, even in real time, the hit looked late. It's just a bad look. Trevor Lawrence was going down the slide, and he gets hit underneath his chin strap, I guess, and then his head hits the ground. And the way that Azeez Al-Shaair launched his body with his forearm out, it just wasn't a good look. Now, I will say this. That's a hit that you will see on almost any football game tackling any position other than the quarterback. So where should I start? Because I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll start with the hit itself. I don't think it was a clean hit. I don't think Azeez Al-Shaair intentionally hurt Trevor Lawrence. He came out with an apology almost immediately. He apologized to Trevor. He brought up that he actually saw Trevor before the game and that he had told him it was good to see him back on the field and he wished him well. And then he addressed, all the people who have been saying racist, Islamophobic things towards him, attacking his character. He said that for him, it doesn't matter to him what people who don't know him think, that only his God is his judge, and the people who know him know his heart. And CJ and D'Amico Ryans and other teammates of his went to bat for him. In that apology, he also mentioned to the Jacksonville Jaguars that he completely understood what they did to have their teammates back. An entire melee ensued after this hit. Most of you who watched the game, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, an entire melee ensued. Melvin Ingram immediately started, pushing him to the ground. A bunch of other teammates came over, and it was a dust up. It was a major dust up for sure. And I guess Azeez Al-Shaair, in the heat of the moment, just didn't seem really aware of the fact that he had just made a hit on somebody that had them laying on the ground, knocked out cold. And obviously his teammates didn't notice either, because they were all busy trying to fight Azeez instead of making sure their teammate was okay. So it was all just really strange, that whole sequence. I've never played football at that level. I don't know at this point, though, what a defensive player is supposed to do. There's people saying, well, Trevor Lawrence started his slide late. Okay, maybe he did. And if he did, when I looked at it, it did not look like, it looked like as he began to slide, Azeez Al-Shaair was also beginning to get ready to launch himself. Now, you can ask yourself, should he have been launching himself in the fashion that he did? Launching himself into the air like a weapon? He's a football player, and he even said in his apology, my job is to try to hit you as hard as I can and hope and pray that you're able to get up and play the next play and go home to your family. And we have to admit about this sport that we love so much. It's true. It's a violent sport. We love the hard hits, except for some reason we don't like it when it's a quarterback. And this is the part I don't understand. If a quarterback is defenseless and somebody makes a dirty low hit, hits them in the head while they're not paying attention, I think that's wrong and that needs to be taken out of the game. But why are we giving different rules to quarterbacks when they run the ball than everybody else? A running back isn't allowed to just give up his body. If a running back slides down on the ground, he's going to get pile driven into the ground by the defense, and there's not going to be a flag. Like, no other player on the field is able to give themselves up, nor do they try. I've seen running backs fall to the ground because they want to not run out of bounds and keep the clock running. But nobody else in football and no other position in football is trying to avoid being hit except the quarterback. And that's just, that's the league that we love and support now. It's a quarterback driven league. So the league has made it very appear that they want these star quarterbacks in the games. They want them healthy. They don't want to put out a bunch of, with all due respect, they don't want to put out a bunch of Mac Joneses and a bunch of, Mason Rudolphs. They don't want that to be the product that's on the field every Sunday. So they're protecting the quarterbacks. That being said, I don't know if the slide is actually protecting the quarterback. We've seen this happen a bunch of times, especially, you can't dictate to a quarterback when they're supposed to slide. It's not like you could put a clock on it and make it a rule. Like, you have to slide, immediately after getting the first down, or you have to slide after 5 yards. I don't know. I think getting rid of the slide is the answer, because in my opinion, if Trevor Lawrence would have just ran and taken the hit, he would have been able to get back up and play on, just like everybody else does in football. The fact that he tried to slide, you can argue at the last minute when Azeez was getting ready to launch himself for the hit. That probably put him in more danger than just taking the hit would have. And I think that the NFL should really consider making that a rule, changing the rule to where quarterbacks cannot slide to avoid a hit. Look, man, either get out of bounds. I saw that Dan Orlovsky was saying that people need to dive. I don't think that's a good idea at all. I think diving through the air puts you in much more harm's way than sliding does. But look, man, if you're going to have a sport where you're allowed to tackle, then you can tackle everybody but this one position. It doesn't make any sense. So either, Mark Schlereth said, like, make the rule where quarterbacks aren't allowed to run then, or if they're allowed to run, then just make them take the same hits everybody else has. And they know, hey, if I run, I'm going to get hit. But I think that would help avoid situations like this. Am I making excuses for Azeez Al-Shaair? No. I think he should understand the league that he's playing in. And after that apology and after his teammates and his coach having his back, unfortunately, there's a lot of tape of Azeez Al-Shaair doing things that definitely muddle the line of sportsmanship. And ironically, I saw this discussed on First Take. D'Amico Ryans came out and defended Azeez Al-Shaair, and he actually criticized the Jaguars team for overreacting. Said that it was wrong of them to try to start a fight. That Azeez, was not intending to hurt their player. A player got hurt, and it was unfortunate. And a lot of people did not agree with D'Amico Ryans and what he was saying. And look, he's going to defend his guy. And I can see two things can be true at the same time. It can be an illegal hit. It could be a hit that he shouldn't have made. And it can still be wrong that the Jaguars escalated it to the point that they did. Now, they're human. They see their guy get hurt. It's an emotional game. It's a physical game. They already have adrenaline pumping. There's lots of testosterone going. I understand why they reacted the way that they did, but it doesn't mean that they should have. If it was me, I'd have been more concerned with my guy. I can F you up later. Let me make sure my guy's not dead on the field first. But that's just me. Everybody's different. I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong or vice versa. I don't, like I said, having never been in a situation like that, I can't say for sure what I would do. I think I would be more concerned with making sure Trevor was okay. But hey, maybe I'd go try to beat somebody up. I don't know. But for me, I was expecting after that, as soon as I saw the hit and I saw him get ejected, I knew he was going to get ejected. And I thought to myself, he's going to get suspended for a game. And then when he started trying to fight the whole team, I was like, might be 2 games. There was no scenario that I expected that Azeez Al-Shaair would get suspended for 3 games. And that's what happened. They announced it yesterday that it's a 3-game suspension. And it just so happens to be the Texans' most important 3 games, most difficult 3 games of their schedule. It is a point in the schedule where they need to have all hands on deck because they're playing 3 games in 10 days. And so you want to have as many healthy and available bodies as possible. And I know Azeez Al-Shaair will probably be appealing he already has appealed the decision. I don't see the league cutting him a break on that. Usually when they appeal, they'll knock a game off. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think they're trying to make an example of Azeez. Obviously, I've never seen a suspension handed down and then a statement be made to the player through the league the way that had happened this time around. The league actually made a statement about Azeez Al-Shaair and his inability to adhere to the rules, his lack of sportsmanship. I've never seen that before. That was a first for me. Now, I could be wrong. I like to watch football, but I don't pay attention to all of the ins and outs of what goes on outside the lines. But I've never seen that before. So I think they're trying to make an example of him, and I don't think it's right. I know that Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans, they've made how they feel about it clear. In fact, Nick Caserio said that what bothers him the most is the narrative around Azeez, that he's not a good person, that he does not have good intentions, and that he's a bad guy. And Nick Caserio said, frankly, I think it's bullshit. Okay. Once again, you expect Nick Caserio to have his guys back. I'm curious how he would feel if Josh Hines Allen had made that exact same hit on CJ Stroud. And therein lies the rub. Because Houston Texans fans, I've seen you guys on all the spaces. You guys have been saying over and over and over that it's not that big of a deal. It's football. Why don't you just make them play touch football? Why don't you make them play flag football? Okay. It's real easy to say that when it's not your guy. But if you had seen CJ Stroud laying on the field in that fencing position, would you feel the same way that you feel right now? Or is it just because you don't like the Jaguars and you don't like Trevor Lawrence? You got to be able to separate your fanhood in this situation. I don't think it's cool. Look, man, I know we want to make big hits. And I told Ruben, I said, I think the reason he launched his body the way he did is he was hoping to jar the ball out, which is the same thing he would do against anybody else running the football. If it was a running back, if it was a receiver, if it was a tight end, that's exactly the same thing he would do. So in his mind, he can't say to himself, wait a minute, this is a quarterback. Or at least he shouldn't have to say, wait, this is a quarterback. I better change the way I instinctively tackle him. And that's the reason I think the quarterback, if you run, you should just take the hit. Just take the hit. But we'll see what happens, man. Listen, Azeez Al-Shaair, I said this in the last episode of the Twin Toros. He hurt the team by making that hit more than he helped him. Not only because he got kicked out of the game and then the defense proceeded to really get torn apart by Mac Jones. And I think that hit galvanized the Jaguars. It definitely, they looked like a different team after that hit than they did before. He definitely put some juice and some life into that team. And then Mac Jones came out and carved this defense up. Mac Jones had 235 yards on 20 of 23 passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 105.6 rating, and he only played 3 quarters. And he almost brought the team back from a 23-6 deficit in the 4th quarter. This is the reason I've said that the Texans, let's put the Azeez Al-Shaair thing aside, which is a problem because he is their best linebacker and the captain of the team. But just looking at the Texans as a whole, before this game and after this game was played, I've said multiple times, I said last week, this team is just mediocre. They're not great. Even the defense, everyone wants to tell me, oh, this defense is elite. Is it elite? Defenses don't make Mac Jones and Will Levis look like all pro quarterbacks. And that's exactly what this defense has done. Now, I'll be fair to them. The offense in many of these games has put them in bad positions, but that didn't happen in this game. The offense played pretty well, all things considered. Nico Collins had like 120 yards passing. CJ Stroud had a good game. I think he had 242 yards passing, 22 of 34, a touchdown, 0 interceptions, got sacked twice. But all in all, the offense did not put the defense in bad positions. The defense just got cooked by Mac Jones. And that's why it seems whenever the offense plays well, there's something wrong with the defense. If they're both playing well, then they make a mistake on special teams. If the offensive line is playing well, the defensive line can't get to the quarterback. It's not just one section of the team. Like overall, this team's just an average, I think, good football team. If you're 8-5 in a bad division, you're an average, okay, dare I say, mediocre at times football team. That's just what they are. Can they improve in the next 4 weeks? I really hope so. They're going to have to. They got to win 2 of the next 5. I'm sorry, they have 4 games left. They have 4 games left. Right now, they're 8-5. So in order to match their win total, they need to win 2 more games. You thought you had a good chance to do that with Azeez Al-Shaair. With the fact that Nico Collins was back, you got Joe Mixon running the ball really well. The offensive line seems like it's starting to put things together. And listen, we've seen Neville Hewitt play really well in the absence of Al-Shaair. It's not the end of the world against some of the teams that Neville Hewitt had to face. Neville Hewitt played really well against the Packers. But you got the big boys coming up. You got the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and you got to play them all through those games in 10 days. And then you get to go play the Titans to finish the season, who already just beat your butt in your house. So now you got to go play them in their house. So it's no guarantee that you get those 2 wins. I got to believe the Texans are going to win at least 2 more games. My goodness. If they don't, they got to at least win 2 more games. I don't know where those 2 wins are coming from, but they need to win at least 2 of the next few games. I say they need to. I don't know if they. I mean, you've got the Colts right on your tail. The Colts have an easier schedule than you do. So, yeah, you need to win, I'm assuming, at least 10 games to win your division. 8 games isn't going to cut it, so you can't afford to go 0 for 4. I don't think that's going to happen. But, yeah, the Texans, life just got harder for them because of this Azeez Al-Shaair suspension. But they have some things they need to figure out. And the bye week could not have come any sooner at a better time. And I know they have probably the latest bye week of all the teams in the NFL. But they need to take this week to reevaluate themselves. My boy Ruben from Twin Toros, he wants them to change play callers. He wants Bobby Slowick to relinquish his play calling duties. I don't see that happening. I don't think it's going to happen. Hopefully what they do is they take this week off. They watch a lot of film. The players who need the rest, take the rest. Who need the physical rest. Some players may need mental rest as well. Whatever you got to do. Take this week, step away from the game, and come back refreshed. And I hope that when this team comes back, they're playing the best football that they've played all season. They're going to need to because their schedule's brutal and the expectations are high in Houston. I would say the state of the Texans is in a little bit of turmoil right now. There's some controversy going on for sure. And, we talk more about it in the most recent episode of the Twin Toros podcast, which is on ESPN Houston. If you guys have not subscribed to ESPN Houston, please do so. And also subscribe to 713 Houston Sports. You can watch the videos that Ruben and I do on his channel prior to the games. But yeah, I would say state of the Texans right now is a little bit of turmoil. There's some controversy. We get a chance to see just what this team is made of. I like the way that Nick Caserio stuck up for his guy. I like the way that D'Amico Ryan stuck up for his guy. Listen, H-Town is used to us versus everybody else. And that's kind of the question I asked at the opening of the show. Is this becoming a trend with all of our teams? We've seen it with the Astros, us versus everyone else. It looks like it's starting to be that with the Texans as well after this Azeez Al-Shaair hit on Trevor Lawrence. And look, we can't pretend like there's not a racial component to it. There is. There's always going to be, not because there should be, but that's just the world we live in. I saw several people tweeting, posting racist and Islamophobic things about Azeez Al-Shaair. He got doxxed. His address was put out on the internet. It's a crazy world we live in, man. I think as NFL fans, we got to be better. Houston fans, it's easy for us to sit on this side and say, oh, don't do that. But, we got to make sure that if the roles were reversed, like I said, if Josh Hines-Allen put that same hit on CJ Stroud, would you be taking the higher road than these other fans are before you criticize them? I hope you would, because I want the Houston Texans fans to be better than that. It's the reason I do this show. It's the reason I exist. So, I'm looking forward to talking more this week about what the Houston Texans need to do coming out of the bye. Unfortunately, we're going to have to be talking about what they're going to do without their captain on defense in the middle of the field. All right. So, state of the Houston Texans, a little bit of turmoil. Let's move on now to the state of the Houston Rockets. Well, the state of the Houston Rockets is good. Spoiler alert. I can just say that straight up. However, the angle I wanted to take about is Houston becoming a city of villains. After the Rockets defeat the OKC Thunder on Sunday in a really good game, really exciting game. And listen, the Rockets have established themselves as a physical basketball team. And so things get a little bit chippy when you play the Houston Rockets. And normally they thrive. They love to have the dust up here, the brouhaha, as as Kevin Harlan would call it. They love those. It usually energizes them and gets them going. However, on Tuesday versus the Kings, the whole game just seemed like a reversal of roles. The Kings played more like the Rockets have been playing. And I would say the Rockets played more like the Kings have been playing. The Rockets were out-rebounded, which is not normal. They're the second best rebounding team in the league. They got outscored in the paint. That's not normal. They usually score a lot of points in the paint and defend the paint really well. They turn the ball over a lot, which is not normal. So it's not a surprise that they lost. The reason they lost is because they were not doing the things they normally do well. The Terror Twins weren't great. Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. Tari Eason had like 16 points, but he shot like 5 of 16. Had a terrible shooting night. He was missing layups. It was just not a good, normal game for the Rockets. Now, I do want to say this. And this, I'm not making an excuse. This is not the reason they lost. But the refereeing in that game was terrible. Terrible. So bad. There's so many different calls I can think of that were either made or not made. First of all, they were calling a moving screen on every Rocket who set a screen, it seemed like. I don't recall a moving screen being called on the Kings. Jalen Green got basically punched in the face. I don't want to say punched in the face because it was open hand. He got clawed in the face. He's bleeding. He can't even see out of his eye. And the Rockets are asking the refs to go review it because I don't believe it was a basketball play. It was definitely not a basketball play in my opinion. And they didn't even go look at it. Amen Thompson had an out of bounds play that he did not touch the ball. The replay was clear he did not touch the ball before it went out of bounds. They actually reviewed it and they still said that he touched it. I mean, it was usually when you're doing a replay, you're looking for indisputable evidence in order to overturn a call. So they said, hey, he hit it out of bounds. And he said, no, I didn't. Challenge it. Now, Amen Thompson, if he touched that ball and he vehemently went to his coach and was like, no, challenge that. I didn't touch it. That in itself just wouldn't happen. So he was very, very adamant. You need to review this. I didn't touch the ball. The referees have to have every angle possible in that arena. How in the hell they did not see that he didn't touch that ball? It's insane to me. And that brings me to this point. What is the point of having replay? I've seen this happen many times. What's the point of having replay when you look at the replay and you see you obviously made the wrong call, but the referees don't have to call? They don't change the call because I guess they just don't have to. Why is there no accountability for the referees and officials and umpires? In every sport, players, coaches are required to go speak to the media after every game and answer questions. That means if they play bad, they got to go face the music and they got to go answer some tough questions. Why don't referees have to do that? Whenever a player messes up, the amount of money they're being fined or the length of their suspension is public knowledge. Why isn't that the case for the referees? Well, they don't want to make the referees the subject of the games. Really? If you don't want to do that, then hold them accountable when they F up. There's so many people who believe that these sports are rigged, and I'm not that much of a conspiracy theorist. However, when I see stuff like this happening, it kind of makes me wonder. But they either let their pride or sometimes, I guess, the money line decide when they're going to fix a bad call and when they aren't. I thought Jalen Green, he had a 4-point play wiped away off a ticky-tack away from the ball foul. There were 3 refs staring at Alperen Şengün when he was fouled about 6 times on a drive to the basket. And that's the straw that broke the camel's back for both he and Ime Udoka. They both received double technicals immediately, and they were both ejected from the game. And Ime Udoka had some really strong words for the referees when he was done in the press conference. And that, once again, why can't we ask that referee who stood there watching Alperen Şengün get fouled, why can't we see him step up behind a bank of microphones? And why can't someone ask him that question? Hey, here's the replay, Mr. Referee. here's Alperen Şengün getting hit in the face multiple times on the way to the basket. Why is it that you didn't make that call? Mr. Silver, what are the consequences when a referee blatantly misses a call? That's like don't that's like the untouchable, unthinkable. Don't ask about the refs. Like, especially for the NBA, who literally had a ref who was working with the mob to fix games. You might want to show a little bit more transparency about your league at minimum, but it's not just the NBA, it's all these leagues. The referees have way too much ability to control these games. And when you add the fact that now there is legal sports betting going on, a lot of people believe the fact that now it's legal, maybe it takes away the shady aspect of it. But to be honest with you, look, man, it's really weird when you see certain teams decide to kick a field goal instead of go for a touchdown, and that field goal just happens to cover the spread. When you look at, we just saw with the Bears refusing to call a timeout and letting the clock run out on themselves and losing a game. I believe Matt Eberflus had 2 timeouts in that game and inexplicably just let the clock run out. It's kind of weird. Like, you're already in field goal range, and I believe they were down by 3. Listen, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's some weird things going on in these sports. And, you know, when I was watching that game, the Rockets game yesterday, I did not feel that it was fairly refereed. However, once again, I'm not making an excuse. That is not the reason that the Rockets didn't win, but it is the reason, I would say, because they lost pretty handily. I mean, it ended up being by 9 points at the end, but I think that with some better refereeing, they probably at least would have had a chance to win the game. I think the bad refereeing took away their chance to overcome the negative things that they had done in the game. But I mean, also the Kings were the Kings were on fire. The Kings shot 51% from the field. They shot 46% from 3. At one point, the Kings hit 15 consecutive shots, which I have never seen. Only time I've seen 15 consecutive shots hit is when I'm playing 2K and I put the sliders on everything 100 so that I'm not able to miss. That's the only time that's ever happened. It was crazy. They were hitting from everywhere. DeMar DeRozan looked like Toronto DeMar DeRozan. You know, regular season Toronto DeMar DeRozan, obviously. But look, man, the Rockets are 15-7. I believe they're now, once again, a game and a half behind OKC. They're going to be in the NBA Cup knockout games. They're actually hosting a knockout game on December 11th at Toyota Center against the Golden State Warriors, who, ironically, are their next opponent tomorrow night. They will play the Warriors in San Francisco. That game tips off at 9 o'clock Eastern. I'll be doing the game recap for the Dream Shake, so you guys make sure that you check that out. But yeah, so all in all, that one loss doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's the Western Conference. You never know. But that one loss, it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. The Houston Rockets are playing very well, and I think they've established themselves as legit in the NBA. And I think other teams realize that now, and other teams are bringing their A game against them. So they're going to have to make the adjustment. The good news about yesterday's game is that Jalen Green played really, really well after struggling against OKC. He played really good against Philadelphia, had 41 points. And maybe it wasn't that he struggled against OKC. He just didn't play a lot, I guess. And that's the good thing about this Rockets team. They have Jalen Green's the leading scorer, but they have 7 guys averaging double figures. And any given night, it can be anyone. And Jalen Green seems to not mind that some nights he's not the guy. Some nights he's sitting in the fourth quarter, and Ime Udoka just goes with the hot hand, whoever gives him the best chance to win. And this team seems to be embracing that. Right now, you look at their numbers, nobody on this team looks like, hey, that person should be an all-star. They should play on the all-star team. But, I mean, they're winning games, and they're playing really, really well. So I'm extremely excited about the Rockets. I say the state of the Houston Rockets is very strong. And I think they do have a little bit of a bad boy persona. And I know that when the Rockets signed Dillon Brooks, most Houston fans were not happy about that. They hated it. But Dillon Brooks has added some toughness to this team, and I think he's rubbing off on them in a good way. The Houston Rockets are kind of embracing being the villain, similar to the way it seems like the Texans are, similar to the way that the Astros have. So, yeah, it's H-Town versus everybody else, and I'm cool with it. Most Houston Rockets fans, Houston Texans fans, Houston Astros fans, we know what it is, and we're cool with it. It's H-Town till we drown, baby. So I say it's still a good time to be a Houston sports fan. And it's a great time to do podcasting in the city of Houston. Shout out to Ruben, who did his first radio gig last Friday for the Texas A&M game out in College Station. He did a 4-hour radio show with Joe George out there on ESPN 97.5. Super proud of him. You guys please go follow his show. He does daily Houston Texans content. And you guys, please, if you are not following the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, please do so. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow my social medias. Let's get me doing this full time, man, so I can do daily Houston sports content. I would love to do that. So I thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Before I get out of here, listen, the State of the Union in Houston is still strong. We have a winning football team, 8-5, leading the division, still by 2 games. We have a young, up-and-coming, possibly dynasty. The Rockets could possibly be the next dynasty. There is a space there. The Warriors are all getting older. Their dynasty is probably done, although they look good at times this year. LeBron's getting old. KD's getting old. The Rockets could be the next. We'll see. We will see. I think they could be. I give them just as good a chance as anybody else. They're young, they're deep, they're fun to watch. So it's a good time to be a Rockets fan. It's a good time to be a sports fan in the city of Houston. It is strong. The ways you can support this show, let me remind you, one, you've been doing this entire time. You've been listening, you've been watching. Hopefully, once again, you're reminding your friends to like, follow, subscribe, wherever they get their podcast fix. You guys can leave me a tip by either scanning this QR code or going into the show notes of either the video you're watching or the audio you're listening to and click the link to my tip jar. A donation of $50 or more will get you some free Houston Sports State of the Union swag. I guess I'll throw in some Twin Toro swag if you guys want that too. And then there's also links in the description, Amazon links. They are affiliate links. They are for Houston Sports fan gear and the equipment that I am using to bring you this fine podcast. If you purchase either of those, I'll get some change from that, and I really appreciate it. And then once again, I have sponsorship spots available. If you would like for me to advertise your business on either this show, the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, or on the Twin Toros podcast, please reach out to me, email hsstateoftheunionpod@gmail.com, or if you're following me on social media, you can hit me up in my DMs and let me know you'd be interested in letting me represent your company. And I would be interested in us growing our businesses together. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining me. Next week's show will be on Friday. In the meantime, you know what I want you to do. I want you to stay 10 toes down for H-Town. I love you and good night.
This has been the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, hosted by Nick Stevenson. Tune in next week for more news and analysis of your favorite Houston teams. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, the app formerly known as Twitter, if that's even really still a thing. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.